I'm Ron Timmermans with the Florida Aviation Network, and today we're broadcasting live and in the clear from EAA AirVenture 2023 at Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I'm in the Continental Aerospace Technologies booth, and with me is my good friend and colleague, Mr. Chuck Cook, and he is a technical consultant with Continental Aerospace Technologies. Chuck, thanks for having an interview with me today.
Glad to be here, Ron. Glad
Good.
to be here.
So what I wanted to cover today is something that a lot of pilots probably don't understand nearly as well as you do, and that is the recent AD that came out on certain Continental engines manufactured between certain dates or between certain serial numbers, and it was known as SB.
Yes, earlier this year we had a service bulletin that came out that was Service Bulletin 23-01 that dealt with the snap rings that are on the harmonic balance dampers on the crankshaft.
Okay, and that SB eventually became an AD, did it, or was it just an SB?
It came out initially as a service bulletin and later was transformed into an airworthiness directive, and it pretty much affected, the majority of our engines produced earlier this year.
I don't
certain
remember
dates. Any dates exactly.
That's immaterial. So a service bulletin doesn't have to be complied with, but when it comes in AD, an airworthiness directive, there's no choice.
Correct. When it becomes an airworthiness directive, it is mandatory.
Okay. And Chuck inspected more than 200 of the engines?
No. I only personally inspected about 25 to 30 of them. The majority of these were out at the Beechcraft factory.
Oh, okay. So Chuck worked at the Beechcraft factory and other places to do these inspections. So he knows in detail what it is. But for you and me, general public, we probably don't have a real good understanding of what this snap ring is, what it does, and why it's important that it be corrected. So Chuck is going to explain to us today just where it's located and why it's important. So between us here, we have not a mock-up, but a real crankshaft from a Continental engine.
Yes, this is a crankshaft from one of our Continental six-cylinder engines like would be in your 520 or 550 engine. This would be the propeller end, and this would be the accessory case end. And we have on the back of this our damper weights, which is the part that was affected with the snap rings.
Right. So without going into detail of why we need damper things, just they're very important for the engine operation, obviously.
Yes, they dampen hydraulic vibrations that are created naturally during the operating of the engine.
Okay, good. So you've got one that's disassembled. It's supposed to remain on here, and it moves a little bit, of course. That's the dampening effect. But
so here we have our weight itself, and then here you can see kind of there's a small plate with 3 holes in it, and that then the snap ring itself is in that groove around there.
Okay, so let's look at this one that Chuck has in his hand here. This is the damper that is off the engine right now.
That is correct. And we can see the 2 ends of the snap ring with the small holes in the blue paint. The snap ring fits in a groove there, and there's a small plate at this point. There's a pin that goes in through here that holds it onto the tab onto the crankshaft. The problem that had occurred during assembly was twofold. First one was that the snap ring may not have been seated properly into the groove that holds the plate in place, or the orientation may not have been proper. The opening of the snap ring is supposed to be towards the base or the flat part of the weight itself.
Okay, and Chuck, so we obviously had some problems with some of the engines that caused this service bulletin to come out and eventually an AD. So then you went to work checking several of the engines back at the factory and other places as well. And so your job was to check to see that the snap ring was in the groove and in place and oriented properly. And when you found that it wasn't, what did you have to do?
Either the snap ring has to be removed and replaced, and you have to make sure that the plate is down far enough into the hole, or you have to work to reseat the snap ring in the groove, or if it was seated properly but the orientation was wrong, you had to reorient it so that it was towards the bottom. We were given a tool, which is a calibrated, measured tool, so that we removed cylinders 1 and 3 so that we could access the rotating crankshaft, and then the tip end of the tool was moved down in between the two ends of the snap ring. If the snap ring was properly seated, the tool would fall in between the two ends easily. If the snap ring was not properly seated, you would come up here and it would keep it from going all the way down into there. So the two things, again, were either the orientation or improper seating into the groove.
Okay, this is amazing. Something as small, otherwise insignificant looking, and very inexpensive part was crucial to this whole engine operating properly and safely.
That is correct. When this is in rotation, the rod actually passes by here and only misses this weight by about 1/8 of an inch. So if that ring comes out, the pin itself that holds this in place can work its way out, and then the most often things that happen would be that pin would hit the piston rod, or the rod for the piston, and parts come apart.
Wow. So you averted, obviously, a lot of potential engine damage by doing this inspection. And for those engines that were okay, that was wonderful to know. But you had to remove cylinders 1 and 3 to just to be able to do the inspection.
That is correct.
And then do the inspection and tweak it in the cases. How many did you, of the ones that you looked at, how many did you find problematic?
In the particular ones that I was looking at, there was only one that the snap ring did not seat fully into the groove. And there were, I think, 5 of them that the orientation was off. And if it's moved more than 10 degrees, it's considered to be out of orientation. So it didn't have to be far out for us to have to make an adjustment on it.
Wow. Well, I am grateful to Chuck and several of his colleagues at Continental that were able to do these inspections and to assure that these engines are either safe as we had hoped they would be, or fixed them so that they were safe after your inspection. This has been the best explanation of the snap ring issue that I've ever heard, and with your graphics and your examples here. Chuck, thank you so much. It's good to see you, and you having a good time at AirVenture?
So far I am.
Are you getting a little tired?
My voice is getting tired, but I love seeing all the people up here. We've got so many people that stop into the booth year after year to see us. It's just a big happy aviation family up here for the most part.
Indeed it is, and I'm part of that happy aviation family this week at Oshkosh, having a great time with my colleagues, my cameraman, Dr. Greg Ricca. Thank you for helping us out here today, and Chuck, thank you for being with us. I'm Ron Timmermans with the Florida Aviation Network, broadcasting live and in the clear from EAA AirVenture 2023 at Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Stay tuned to the Florida Aviation Network YouTube channel. You'll see many more interviews. Thank you very much.